as Stalin's words were immortalized in the eponymous film, with music by Shostakovich. We'll be looking at just a small selection of events and people from this momentous year at the beginning of what was a very busy century. So please get comfortable and enjoy the video. 1919 was a year of contradictions, of triumph and tragedy, invention and destruction, industry and complacence. It was a year in which the ambitions and ingenuities of the 19th century converged with the frenetic energies and freedoms of the 20th. A year in which decisions were made that would shape the world for the next century and beyond. Much of 1919 was about celebrating the peace that followed the end of one of the most destructive wars in history, the Great War, the First World War, that had seen new technologies and destructive force on a massive scale. To celebrate this new peace, sports events were planned, competitions, exhibitions, and festivals all over the world. On the 28th of June, the Treaty of Versailles promised to engage all of the world's powers in an agreement that would bring balance to the decades-old diplomatic, economic, and territorial struggles that had resulted in war. It failed in many ways. The League of Nations was established in the hope of opening communications and averting future wars. It also ended in failure. The coming years would see economic hardship, the task of rebuilding a broken Europe, and the effects of the losses to Spanish influenza. Germany's Weimar Republic, because of its support of this treaty, played a role in throwing Germany into an economic depression. All over the world, workers began to strike for better conditions and rights. Worker and racial rights were rife, and 1919 saw the founding of extremist socialist and fascist groups. In Russia, the Bolshevik Revolution gained momentum, and the Politburo was established by Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin, while the British Empire was dealing with unrest in Ireland, Afghanistan, and India. 1919 saw the emergence and establishment of associations to protect workers, minorities, and ethnic groups from injustices. The Supreme Liberty Life Insurance Company of Chicago was the first insurance company organized by African Americans, and it was formed this year. U.S. Congress passed the Women's Suffrage Bill, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, giving women the right to vote. While not the first to grant some form of women's suffrage, and certainly not the last, the cultural impact that the United States had over Europe and much of the world astounded even the Americans at the time. It was also in this year that the Hollywood film studio United Artists was founded by Charlie Chaplin, Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford, and D.W. Griffith, to allow actors and actresses to have control over their own interests and end exploitive contracts. There was a surge in discovery and invention, as well as production marked by the development in car U.S. Navy flying boat Curtiss NC-4 aircraft, commanded by Albert Reed, completed the first crossing of the Atlantic, taking 11 days. Also, coming the opposite direction, a British R-34 airship crossed the Atlantic in 108 hours, landing in New York City. The restlessness and tension that began with the 20th century was felt in the music world too, where there were more radical experiments with tonality and form. Claude Debussy was one of the greatest French composers to come out of this era, France's pinnacle of musical composition, and was one of the most potent influences on the course of music in the 20th century. His compositions coincide with the school of painting called Impressionism, seeking to evoke moods and sensuous impressions through harmony and tone color. So much does this school of expression in painting coincide with that of music, that the textures and brush strokes of the paintings seem to be reflected or even felt in the music, as if painting a feeling or the memory of a sensation with sound itself. Debussy composed his Fantaisie for piano and orchestra between October 1889 and April 1890, and it received its first public performance only in 1919, a year after Debussy's death. This work is dedicated to the pianist René Chancerelle, who had been scheduled to play the solo part for the cancelled premiere in 1890. The Fantaisie is in 3 movements, taking the sonata allegro form, as in a traditional concerto, with first, second, and the third movements. Though a fantasia is traditionally in a single movement with several sections of different character, this work retains the basic form of a piano concerto. The title Fantaisie was used because, unlike a traditional concerto, it employs the same 2 themes in all 3 movements, which are Andante ma non troppo in G major, Lento e molto espressivo in F sharp major, and the third movement, Allegro molto, in G major. The first public performance of this work, scheduled in 1890, was cancelled when Vincent Dandy, the chosen conductor, claimed that he did not have enough time for rehearsals and proposed that he perform only the first movement. Debussy declined, and over the next few years made numerous revisions, eventually giving up on the work and declaring that the Fantaisie would never be published or performed during his lifetime. It received its first public performance on November 20th, 1919, in London by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, with Alfred Cortot as soloist. Serenely masterful command of music is demonstrated in this work, and this style has certain very well-known influences such as César Franck, Vincent Dandy, Camille Saint-Saëns, Gabriel Fauré, but also some composers you might not have heard about, such as Gabriel Pierney, Bernhard Stavenhagen, and even Poland's first Prime Minister, pianist and composer Ignacy Jan Paderewski, who took office in 1919 in an independent Poland, signing the Versailles Peace Treaty. It was also in this year that another composer of this vein had the first performance of the Three-Cornered Hat in London, and that was Manuel de Falla. In January 1919, the 18th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified and passed on October 28th. Prohibition across the nation came into force a year later, 1920. For 13 years, the United States had a constitutional ban on the manufacture, sale, and consumption of alcohol. This was the result of a temperance movement that saw alcohol as the cause of poverty, family breakdowns, and political corruption. They believed a ban on alcohol would solve these social problems and improve the health of Americans. Large-scale organized crime resulted and boomed in the wake of the ban, with huge amounts of bootlegging occurring, such as that by the famous gangster Al Capone, and speakeasies, which were illicit establishments that sold alcohol secretly, becoming very popular. Consumption declined dramatically and rates of alcohol-related illnesses fell, but crime grew and support for prohibition decreased every year. By 1929, it was widely unpopular and was blamed for a decrease in the tax revenue needed during the Great Depression. I would like to introduce you to Harry Craddock. Born in Gloucestershire in 1875, Harry moved to the United States in 1897, where he worked at Cleveland's Holland Inn Hotel and New York's Knickerbocker Hotel and Hoffman House as a bartender of great talent. He left America during Prohibition and joined the American Bar at the Savoy Hotel, London in 1920, and rode into fame. The Marion Star newspaper writes, "The last legal cocktail in America is reported to have been mixed at the old Holland House on Fifth Avenue by Harry Craddock. Word drifts back from London that Craddock is now frosting the shakers at the Savoy. He took a boat the next morning pouting and has never returned." Middletown Daily Times writes, "For those who recollect torrid evenings in the blazing zone of highest visibility, and the tired eaves and faraway look of the next morning when they festooned themselves before the old Hoffman House bar for a sure case of morrow, Harry Craddock was a beneficent Santa Claus. If you're going to London, visit the Savoy. He'll fix you up." Harry Craddock made a name for himself in London at the Savoy American Bar, writing and publishing the Savoy Cocktail Book, which is still in publication. So let's have a look at the Savoy Cocktail Book. And this is available online, and the link is in the description below. The cover, very nice, with inside an Art Deco pattern there. And here we have the Savoy Cocktail Book, compiled by Harry Craddock of the Savoy Hotel, London. If all be true that I do think, there are 5 reasons why men drink: good wine, a friend, or being dry, or lest we should be by and by, or any other reason why which is dedicated to you. And there is Harry Craddock's autograph with this preface. And he says, "Here's how." It's a forward and a few hints for the young mixer if you're just starting out mixing cocktails. A few of his tips and advice. We also have a few historical notes before we go into the 750 odd cocktails, all of Harry's invention, with a few little notes, such as "This is the cocktail doctors recommend," "This is the genuine article." A lot of these cocktails are named for famous people or events that happened at the time. Here's one to be taken before 11 a.m. All in alphabetical order, all of forming the basic cocktail repertoire that is still used today. The Manhattan cocktail, named after the island on which New York City stands. And here we have the Mary Pickford cocktail, one of Hollywood's first superstars, also started United Artists, and all of the martinis. Created by Harry Craddock on May 12th, 1926 to mark the end of the general strike, the strikes off cocktail. Tom and Jerry, nice little bow to history there. This cocktail is popular in the officers' mess of the Scots Guard, hence its name SG cocktail. And on the bottom right, our recipe for today. Let's put on our cocktail bling, and here we go. Alright, let's mix a cocktail. We're going to be making a sidecar, so we need some Courvoisier, cognac, or brandy, and it looks like I need to get some more soon. We're going to use Cointreau. We need some ice, cocktail measure, a cocktail shaker, and some lemon. I've also got a peeler and a lemon squeezer, a little cocktail glass, and a swizzle stick. So the first thing I'm going to do is make my little swizzle. So I'm going to try and very unceremoniously make a little piece of lemon zest. I'm going to stick it on the swizzle stick and save that. Alright. Now we're going to get some ice. Now this one calls for 1/2 measure of cognac or brandy. And 1/4 measure of Cointreau. Next we need a quarter measure of lemon. Now I'm just going to put that straight in the shaker and estimate. And you might like more lemon or less lemon depending on your taste. And I'm just going to use an ice cube to rinse out the measure so that we don't lose any of the yummy spirits. Alright, let's shake it. So you want to shake it until some frost starts to form on the shaker. It's nice and frosty, so you can see that. Alright, now we're going to get a beautiful golden foggy cocktail. And there's our swizzle. And that, my friend, is Harry Craddock's Brandy Sidecar, just for you. Cheers. I hope you have enjoyed this sojourn into the year 1919, and you found it relaxing and interesting and enjoyable. And as always, if there's anything that you would like to know more about, or if you have any suggestions or requests or questions, please leave a comment. And in the meantime, be good to yourself. Be kind to others. And, as always, be extraordinary.